Hi, it's Leanne and I'm here today with my very late August wrap-up. This will be a wrap-up of the 7 books that I read in August that were not Man Booker long-listed books. A quick note about that, I'm very sorry to say that I don't think I'm going to be able to get all of the Man Booker books read before the shortlist is announced. I know we'll all know about library cuts. The library cuts around here have meant that my local library is only open a couple of days a week. It only gets deliveries on one of those days a week, and so even though the books that I have waiting have been in transit for 10 days to 2 weeks now, they obviously just have not gotten there in time. So I'm hoping beyond hope that I will get them at the start of the week and I can maybe get a couple read before the shortlist, but hopefully I'm going to try my absolute hardest to avoid the announcement of the shortlisted books until I have read the entire long list, so that I am able to come up with my own shortlist without worrying about what actually made it onto the proper one. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Like I say, I've got 7 books to wrap up now. I'm just going to wrap them up fairly quickly. I'm completely knackered. We put our house on the market this week, and so I've been constantly cleaning and tidying and getting things ready for the photos, and now I've got to keep it at that level for viewings, which will be starting in a couple of days, which is not the easiest when you've got a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old running around, but so far I'm on top of it. I don't know how long that'll last. Probably by the first viewing on Monday it'll be a complete pigsty, but fingers crossed. Please keep your fingers crossed for us as well. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Paradise Lodge by Nina Stibbe. This is it's told from the point of view of a 15-year-old girl called Lizzie who works in an old people's home in I think it's the late 1970s. The home is struggling with nearby competition, and it's just about how Lizzie and a whole band of quirky characters are kind of just working to keep the place afloat. It's a really fun little book. It's quite an easy read. It was very endearing. It's very much British comedy in the style of Adrian Mole. A lot of it might go over your head if you're not British or a complete Anglophile, but it was just really fun. It possibly overstayed its welcome a bit. I think it probably went on about 30 to 40 pages too long, but I really enjoyed it and I want to go back. I know Nina Stibbe has written a memoir which kind of put her name on the map, and also there is another book before Paradise Lodge which is about Lizzie's mother, who is an interesting character in this book. So I would like to go back now and read some more because I find it very enjoyable. The next book is The Unintentional Adventures of the Bland Sisters, which is written by LaReau and illustrated by Jen Hill. This is a children's book. It's one of the ones that my daughter got out of the library for the summer reading challenge over the summer holidays, and I read it to her. There's been other books that I've read to her over the summer that I'm not mentioning here, but this one I really wanted to just give mention to because we both really enjoyed it. She's actually done her own review of it, which I will link below. But yeah, it was really fun. It's about 2 sisters, the Bland sisters, who they are called Kale and Jaundice. They live very happily unexciting lives. Their parents are off on adventures and have left them alone, but from a distance their parents are kind of trying to get them to live more exciting lives as well. They end up being, through the machinations of their parents, they end up being hired by a magician who, and when they're travelling on a train with this magician, she disappears, and the sisters end up working with this really over-exaggerated French detective to try and solve the mystery of where she's gone to. So it's kind of very slightly a bit Agatha Christie-ish for 8-year-olds basically. It was just loads of fun. The characters were really good. I really enjoyed doing all the voices, especially the French detective. It had a bit of surprise and depth to it, because the sisters are enjoying their lives, and they're thinking that they're happy, but they're not realising that actually they are missing their parents and missing having adults in their life. And as the book goes on, they kind of come to this realisation. And the adventure that they're on kind of opens them up to the feelings that they have about their own lives. And it was a really, really fun read. And this is the second in a series. Unfortunately, the first in the series is not available at the library. I don't think my daughter will watch this. She's not particularly interested, but I may end up getting her that for her birthday coming up, or Christmas, mainly because I really want to read it as well. But yeah, and it seems that there's definitely going to be a follow-up to this one, that this is going to be a series. And if you have kids who are in like the 7 to 10-year-old age bracket, or even if you just like reading those books yourself, this is a really good one. And I'm really happy that Lily chose it. Next up, we have a book that everybody's talked about. That is Educated by Tara Westover. There's not a whole lot I'm sure I can add to this, but if you have been living under a rock and don't know what Educated is about, it is a memoir. Tara Westover was brought up in the Idaho mountains with a survivalist family. She decides to, despite the fact that she's never been to school, she decides that she wants to pursue an education, and she ultimately, by the end of the book, ends up with a PhD from Cambridge. That is not a spoiler, that is mentioned in the blurb. It is a brilliant book. It is completely understandable that everybody's talking about it, because it is just so engrossing and fascinating. You are completely drawn in on the very first page. Westover is such a good writer and such an interesting person who's lived such an interesting life. It is one of the best memoirs I've ever read. I do enjoy a good memoir, but I can be quite funny. I only enjoy it if it's a story that I really felt was necessary to be told. This was, it's a life that the vast majority of us could not even begin to imagine. It's not just about Tara Westover, it is about the rest of her family and about the effects that living this life has on the family. There is, mental illness, abuse. That it is a hard book in terms of the abuse that Tara has to deal with from her brother especially, and her dad, just caused by the choices that her parents have made, because they believe it's the best thing to do. But it kind of, for half of the family, it sends them into this spiral that they just can't get out of. For the other half of the family, Tara's not actually the only member of the family with a PhD. 2 of her brothers also have PhDs, that is one of the strangest elements of the book. I don't feel like the way the story is told, it's like education was not a thing. They didn't really have access to many books, to the computer, to the internet, and yet 3 of them have ended up with PhDs. It's a little bit, doesn't quite go together, but you can ignore it because you are just so fascinated by it. To be honest, I wish it could have been longer. Maybe if it had been longer, we could have learned more about how that came to be. And also different things that start off, when Tara is a teenager, she really worries about, being covered up all the time. There's a sense of, she's having to deal with internal slut shaming basically, and you never really find out how she overcomes that and how she manages to build relationships, like romantic relationships. So I would have loved that to be explained more. I could read a sequel of it right now, just going into more of Tara Westover's life. And I'm going to read a quote from it because there was one particular bit that I just was able to really identify with, and I kept going back to it because I couldn't believe how well she'd put it. So this is the quote. "Everything I had worked for, all my years of study, had been to purchase for myself this one privilege, to see and experience more truths than those given to me by my father, and to use those truths to construct my own mind. I had come to believe that the ability to evaluate many ideas, many histories, many points of view was at the heart of what it means to self-create." And that, it describes my own kind of the mental reconstruction that I've gone through as an adult, learning that everything that I learned as a child is not necessarily true, and you have to experience the world and then almost rebuild your own mind to meet that experience. And it also, it explains perfectly the way that books and reading and how important they are to my own mental health, because I suffer from anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, and you can kind of obsess over things that you've learned and that you want to unlearn, but you don't know how to do it. And books are so helpful with that. You know, for me, books and traveling around the world, reading about different characters and, like Westover said, different ideas and histories and points of view. It really does, for me. I don't know how I get by without books, without being able to read and just to appreciate how much more there is than what I learned in my childhood, and how I can reconstruct my own mind and self-create, as Westover said. So amazing book. Absolutely recommend to everybody. I don't know if you can see the cover. The lighting's not so good in here. I don't have the copy of the book anymore because it is back at the library, which is why I'm using the iPad for the cover here. But yeah, highly recommended. One of the best memoirs you'll ever read, I'm absolutely sure. Sorry, that was just me getting rid of my notebook now where I had my quote, sorry. So next, unfortunately not as successful, we have The Cows by Dawn O. Porter. Now, Dawn O. Porter is a TV journalist. She wrote a YA book a few years ago called Paper Aeroplanes, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really good example of YA. And I saw that she had an adult book called The Cows. There we go, there's the cover. I saw that she had an adult book in the library, and I thought, you know what, that's going to be... I knew it was Booker Prize time. I knew I was going to be reading a lot of heavier, more serious books, so I thought this could be nice to just kind of... to read alongside that. No, it wasn't. Please give us a bigger book anytime. Even Snap. I'll take Snap over this. It tells a story of three women who end up being connected by this absolutely ridiculous scandal that one of them has to go through. It's meant to be, according to the blurb, it's about how these women learn to, even though they're all different and there's no reason that they should ever have come together, how their lives do coincide, and how they learn to support each other. No, it's just not. It's the women in this book are awful to each other, to other women, to everybody around them. For what is meant to be a feminist book, it's just not. It's absolutely dreadful. And the story was so ridiculous. The writing was just poor. It was like it was written by somebody who'd never written anything before. And I always think, I'm always very intrigued by the acknowledgements in a book. I always think they can go a long way to telling you a lot about what the writer's intention was in writing the book. And the acknowledgements in this book were essentially like a 3-page Oscar speech, where Dawn Porter was kind of telling her own stories, and it felt like, yeah, the idea of writing a book was more important to her than the story that she was trying to tell. It was all very self-absorbed, and it's a book about self-absorbed women, and stay away from it, please. I beg you to stay away from it. You'll feel worse for having read it. I am not averse. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I think any book that you find enjoyable is fine. This, though, it's not a pleasure just reading it. It makes you feel guilty. It just makes you feel dirty, and it's not a nice book. And I'm sorry. I won't be picking up anything else by Dawn Porter, just at the risk it'll make me feel as icky as this book did. Next, we have Two Sisters by Åsne Seierstad. I have read all of Åsne Seierstad's work. She does non-fiction books about real life events. She wrote The Bookseller of Kabul, where she lived with a family in Afghanistan. She also has done One of Us, which has been adapted by Paul Greengrass. I think that's going to be coming out in cinemas quite soon, which was about Anders Breivik and the massacre in Norway. This is about two sisters who they're teenagers. They're 15 and 17, I think, and they leave their family and go to Syria. And the book is exploring how that affected their family, as well as delving into the girl's past and trying to work out how it was that they were radicalised to such an extent that they would just abandon their lives and go to Syria to support ISIS in Syria. So parts of it were really good. The family were completely torn apart by it. The dad followed them to Syria to try and find them. Their brother turned against religion completely, became atheist, which caused the sisters did stay in touch with their family through online messaging, and it caused a big divide between the two sisters and their brother. And it is a big book, and it took me a few weeks to actually get through it, which is rare for me. But yeah, for the most part, I enjoyed it. I don't think it was Seierstad's best work, and the reason for that is because she felt a lot more restricted in her writing than she normally does. The book was written with the guidance of the two girls' parents, and you got the feeling that there was a lot that was being unsaid. I think they had kind of some editorial control over the book, and while she is a brilliant journalist and a brilliant journalistic writer, this definitely didn't feel like a book that was entirely under her control. And the father readily admits that he's led a film crew astray, lied to them to get access to his daughters, to try and help his daughters, essentially kidnap his daughters from Syria. and you do sense that is there a possibility that he's not telling the complete truth in this book as well. So yeah, it's a bit, I think it would have made a really good series of articles as opposed to this chunkier book. But I did learn a lot about radicalization and why two girls would do this. And so for that, it was worth reading. But like I said, I think I would, if you haven't read any Seierstad before, I don't think this would be the one I'd recommend. And finally, so much for a quick video, the last book I've read is, again, this isn't very clear. I'm going to show this up because I really like the cover of this book. Now you can't see, it's even worse. Oh, slightly there. This is the Nakano Thrift Shop by Hiromi Kawakami. I'm not going to talk about this really because I have another video that I will be doing in the next, probably after I've gotten through the Buka long list project, where this book and a few others will be covered. It's the second book by this author that I've read this summer. I really enjoyed it, but like I say, I'm not going to talk about it. I will talk about this more in a future video. So it's, for the most part, been a good reading month. I don't know how many of the Buka books I read in August, probably 4 or 5. So we're looking at about 12 books read in August, which isn't bad. And most of them, if we ignore the cows, most of them were good reads. As I've said in a comment on here, I don't think I've said it in an actual video, I've been a bit harsh on some of the Buka books that I've read, but as I said in the comment, it hasn't actually been a disappointing month. Nearly all of the Buka books are quite solid in their way. They're just not the absolute masterpieces that some of them could have been. So yeah, so even the books that have been nominated that I've given kind of harsher reviews to, there's generally been something redeemable in all of them. And like I say, if you ignore the cows, it has been a good, August was a good month, and September is proving to be so as well. So yeah, I'll be back in a few days with a review of Warlight by Michael Ondaatje, which is the last book that I have finished while I'm still waiting for these other books to arrive. And so until then, have some happy reading times, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.